Right.
Nowadays, what we're doing, and what I'm also involved with other organizations, is the meta computing and the grid technology. What this involves is taking, say, I don't know, all the personal computers at, say, UT here in Austin, and hooking them up to a couple supercomputers as well, and making it act like it's one giant grid computer. And then what you can do is that's just UT here at Austin. Then you could go back to, say, Tech, where I was the one that worked on the technical aspect of installing their grid, and take all the computers connected together at Tech, and the half a dozen supercomputers, because there's supercomputers at pretty much every university nowadays. I mean, I've administered them at a couple. And so then you could connect Tech Grid, which is the Texas Tech University grid computer, to something like the UT grid, if such a thing were to exist. And there are projects going on to do this at most major universities.
I'd imagine.
And at that point, you've got two grids or more, and that's what we would call a metagrid.
Okay.
And that would really allow for an unprecedented amount of computing power.
Okay, because it's not a new concept to kind of try to
No.
tie several computers
It's not.
together for more processing power, but
Right.
this is on a much vaster scale.
This is
basically.
worldwide.
Okay.
This is, if you wanted to, all the computers in the world. And let me just mention the one major problem with doing that up to this point, why it hasn't caught on, it seems is, even from just the logistics, it's difficult to build a grid and all that sort of thing, of course. But there was no programming language that could run on a grid or a metagrid computer.
Gotcha.
Fortunately for me, I happen to work with one of the most brilliant computer scientists, Dr. Daniel Cook, who currently is like the head of NASA Ames computer science research and all that sort of thing. He's worked with me as my thesis advisor at Texas Tech. He's the head of the Texas Tech Computer Science Department. And for the past couple decades, he's been working on the theory of a new language to do just that. What I've done is I've actually implemented that language, which is to say I typed it out on the computer and made it work, which is certainly not the same thing as working on the theory. These are very different levels
vastly
of,
different,
of
absolutely.
computer
Because having something practical that you can actually apply in a real-world situation as opposed to the theoretical intent to do something is a far vast different thing.
That's
absolutely.
right. And I never could have done the theory myself because I wasn't alive for the past 40
That's
years
very
and able to
interesting
do
to
it.
bring that up, that a lot of times the people that design things, I'm familiar with electronic design and things of that nature, the people that can design can't necessarily repair what they've designed
right.
and things of
A
that
lot of
nature.
times.
So you might think that if you come up with a theory, you can put it into practice, but
It's
that's not always
same
the
thing.
case.
No. The theory and the implementation are very different things, especially when it comes to a grid computing language. And so the name of this language, Dr. Cook's original language, is Sequence L. It is a very special and often very simple and easy to use language that most people would be able to learn to interface with quite readily, especially because what I've done is I've combined it with GridShell, as you may remember I mentioned before, our artificial intelligence. And you can use GridShell to access and to program this metagrid technology through a web browser, just by basically pointing and clicking. And we'll have plenty of demos and things that people can download. All of this software is free. Anyone at any time, anyone on the planet
that's a key component to
can
bring up as
download
well.
this all for free. Absolutely non-commercial software. It is protected, if I might add, under the GNU General Public License, which is the same software license that Linux, the operating system, is protected under. And this means, again, that anybody can use it for non-commercial purposes, which is very strong protection against a big corporation stealing this software from the public. So at this point, you can go ahead and download it all for free. And again, we'll have all of that linked up off of Corey's website, off the Esoteric Science Roundtable website, so everybody can download as much of that as they want, and you can read through the source code and see how it works. It's really kind of, it's a good thing for the public to do. And for all of you programmers out there, this is something that you might want to look into.
Oh, definitely. And we're going to be doing more follow-ups on this as this is more implemented and we're able to use, again, more practical applications
That's right.
and demonstrate them publicly to people.
That's
so
right.
this is really just a first introductory step and to get some of these ideas in a general way out into the public arena, and then we'll go from there and fill in the finer details. Could you please speak a bit about how what are some of the practical real-world applications of using an AI or artificial intelligence system within something as vast as the internet, and how that could help on a global scale to implement certain procedures, policies, and help progress in general?
I've got 3 good examples that I like to use. I think they're very publicly applicable. The first is antivirus security, as most people that use the internet and email are probably painfully aware. There's a lot of spam and junk mail and unsolicited mail and that sort of thing that is currently threatening to slow down or stop certain parts of the internet, which is really inefficient because things like airline travel and supermarket inventory, that all runs over the internet as well. And we would prefer to have food on your table and inventory preference over somebody's spam email for breast enlargement pills or something phony like that.
Right.
Which is obviously, if you get an email like that, you can probably erase it without
More than likely.
losing out too much on that deal.
More than likely.
But what we would be able to do is also, these viruses that attack systems and whatnot, if you had an AI running on the internet, it would be able to quite readily track down and circumvent these viruses. And to me, the best part is it would be able to learn about the way a virus acts so that any future variant, because a lot of the viruses are variant viruses.
Right, that's a good point.
They're a small change to an old virus that allows it to break into many more new systems because the software hasn't updated, the antivirus software hasn't updated yet. And AI would be able to automatically update itself to track variants of the new viruses and shut them down before they destroy systems. And another neat thing that I would mention, that I really like to mention about the antivirus security, is one of the awesome things about having a new language that has an artificial intelligence built in is that every time, and I'll mention this again, every time it runs any program, it learns how to run that program a little bit faster than the last time it ran it. And so every time it tracks down and destroys a virus, it's going to be able to track down and destroy the next virus a little bit better.
So it's always streamlining itself, and it's always becoming more efficient. And
it's
all
always
that.
becoming more efficient.
It's kind of like the human body as well in that sense. That once you get a disease and you can understand it, you get the antibodies for that particular disease, then you're ready to face it again and battle it again.
And similar diseases, even, you have a better chance at, because your immune system. That is, it's basically building an actual immune system, because again, the immune system is a neurological system that it requires quite a bit of maybe totally unconscious but thought-like procedures to correctly protect against this disease or that disease. That would basically be giving the internet an immune system. That's one example, though, of course. I'll touch on 2 other quick ones. One of them is the medical applications, which is, of course, also something that everyone, every human at least, that should be interested in. Mortal beings and all of that.
Right, absolutely.
If you had, say, the software that's out there today already written that could try different combinations of drugs over and over and over again to try and find the cure for a common cold or the cure for liver cancer. And it has a simulated human in a simulated computer environment with a simulated drug.
Right.
And this drug is probably never going to be actually created and synthesized in the laboratory. But unless it turns out to be one of these drugs that may have a good effect on the body for some specific disease. And if you were doing this using the new AI language, as I mentioned, every time you tested a new drug, the next drug would test a little faster, because these are simulated drugs. So the next simulated drug would test on the simulated human a little bit faster and a little bit faster. And pretty soon, it's just going to get so fast that you'll be finding, more than likely, these virtual but real-world cures for real-world diseases. This is actually sort of the antivirus thing again, but this time not for the internet, but for the human body.
Right, absolutely.
So medical applications like that.
Right, and so, but you're creating a situation where it's a virtual body, essentially, and a virtual laboratory, essentially.
That's right.
So that you can...
but you can do millions per second, as opposed to having to give an injection and wait and see if it takes 3 weeks to get you sick.
Exactly, right. And then
and then the human accidentally dies. And you don't want that.
So that's a good point too. Yeah, you don't have to bring in an animal or a human factor
That's
for
right.
testing, and that's
No
a
animal
lot of
testing.
people are really against that, and I can
I would
understand
prefer
why.
not to have that myself. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I don't think it's very accurate anyway to try to go from an animal system to a human system and try to make comparisons. They're not always across the board going to be the
That's right.
same.
That's right.
So that's another good application. So medical, with the
Medical,
viral.
antiviral, and one more, which is a good one. And I like this one.
Okay.
The front page of the newspaper, national newspaper, the day after this past September 11th, they had the letter from Osama, right?
Yes.
And right next to it in the column, it was this column on the front page. It says, quote, FBI says it can't infiltrate Al-Qaeda. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what are they using? Obviously, they have to use people, but we're mostly, white Christian-y types that it's not so easy for us to infiltrate, hardcore.
Radical Islamic movements.
Yeah, radical Islamist. I mean, they usually
You can be on
come
albino,
to
perhaps.
you to. Yeah, exactly. You don't go to them, okay?
I got you.
So the only other way, really, is you track their internet traffic, and the only program that many of my listeners, I'm hoping, have been aware of is Carnivore. Which is the program
Yeah,
that
very
the
familiar with
government will install at an internet service provider, your Roadrunner or your net access little mom and pop place.
Right, they're there at
They'll
the
install
hub.
it there, and it'll check everybody's email and internet traffic for some set of words.
Exactly.
Bomb,
Right.
fire, anarchy, different things that could be a threat, right?
Yes.
I mean, you don't want people building bombs and blowing buildings down.
Theoretically, no.
Right. And so, but unfortunately, this program Carnivore really just does not work that well. Because if you're searching for something, that is the bomb, you don't necessarily want the FBI knocking on your door thinking that you're making a bomb.
Right. Good point.
And
Good point.
in order to make that differentiation, you really do, again, need an artificial intelligence that can tell the difference between somebody who's looking for the bomb
Right.
and somebody who's trying to make a bomb.
Correct.
And for worldwide terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda, it might be useful to be able to track them in that manner. In my opinion, that would be one of the few ways you really would be able to infiltrate.
Because
that
there
sort of
has to be
terrorist
some sort of
organization.
electronic communication amongst those groups.
There definitely is. The government is aware of it.
Oh, sure.
But we're having, again, like the newspaper said, a hard time getting at that data. They use encryption. They're not stupid. Okay, they know that what they're doing is illegal and they're threatening human lives, and they're going to take precautions to keep the FBI and the CIA and the NSA from figuring that out and figuring out what their next move is. And hopefully, if we had an intelligent system, it would be able to compensate for our lack of infiltrative ability. Because again, Al-Qaeda will come to you in a mosque if they know that you are a radical Muslim ready to work for them. You just simply don't go to them.
Right, I can understand
And for that reason, they have been keeping themselves alive up to this point, even after September 11th has come and gone a couple times now since the original attacks. So, I mean, in my opinion, we need to stop this sort of terrorist activity. And I don't see a lot of other alternatives, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
So, antiviral, medical, terrorist.
Okay, gotcha.
That's what I see.
Those are three good things that people are struggling with on a daily basis. A lot
That's
of people
right.
are trying to get resolved. So those are good starting points. Do you want to go ahead and take the time and opportunity to get set up with the experiment that you're going to
Yeah. What I'm going to do, this has less to do with computers now and more to do with quantum physics. What I want to do is, since we're limited on time, obviously, the show's only an hour long, I'm not going to try and do an actual entire experiment because it would take a couple hours. But what I'll do is we'll do a quick run-through of what you need to do it and how to do it and what it will do.
Okay.
And so, to give a preface, there is an emerging field of quantum chemistry that deals with new forms of matter that sort of blur the line actually between matter and energy. And the name of this new field of study is popularly known as Ormustry. But what it's dealing with is a certain set of transitional metal elements in the periodic table, including things like silver and gold and rhodium and iridium and osmium, and there's a couple more, that when you do certain chemical things to them, you can put them in special energy states.
Right.
And it's actually technically referred to as an orbitally rearranged state.
Okay.
It has to do with the orbits of the electrons themselves going around the nucleus of the atoms and the molecules that are involved in the experiment.
Okay.
And what we see, and we can do this at home, I am again going to show you the steps. I'll do a mock trial for a home experiment here imminently. You can actually create a orbitally rearranged metallic element, an ORM, O-R-M-E.
So that, in essence, sounds like alchemy, in a nutshell.
This is actually the technical description of what alchemy can and has done for centuries. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we're not required to use a blast furnace and take a year and a half to do our experiments, which is the way back in medieval times, the guy with the huge beard and
right.
looking like Hermes.
Our contemporaries,
exactly.
or our predecessors, rather.
That's right.
In a previous day, but at any rate.
Today, we can use modern technology such as electricity.
Right, right.
And, stuff like that in order to speed the process up significantly. And so, again, we are limited on time, but I'll do a mock trial. So we're going to involve Megan a little bit. She's going to just do some easy at-home sort of example of how to pull this off. I'm going to use the dry erase board here in a second in order to make a diagram or two so it's easier to understand some of this stuff.
Okay, great.
And hopefully the viewers will be able to get it.
Follow along. There.
I'll also, you may, for those of you watching, want to take note. I'll give a website here at the bottom of this board real quick. This is a website that I definitely don't run. I'm not giving out any of our websites tonight. We'll link that off of yours later.
Okay, so stay tuned for that in the future.
Stay tuned for that stuff. When we're authorized to do that, we will. But there is another public website that I'd like to give that can sort of start you on a thought journey. And this is, it's kind of an old website, but it doesn't really matter because the information is still totally valid.
Right.
And I'll just show this for a second here so that everybody can see it and I'll read it. Of course, with all, let me see, with all websites over here, it's going to begin with http://. I just wrote out the website part of it. Instead of .com or .org, it's .ws for website. And the address is Ormus, O-R-M-U-S, .ws, and then a slash and a tilde, which is that little squiggle.
Oh, okay.
And the word pyramid.
Okay.
P-Y-R-A-M-I-D.
Great.
And that's a subsection of the Ormus.ws website.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, Ormustry and Ormus, O-R-M-U-S, is sort of a slang plural for orbitally rearranged metallic element. Okay. And so that being said, we'll link that website up too, but I wanted to make sure that we had at least one point of reference.
Right. That's great.
I'll run through a quick little explanation of how we're going to do this. The method that I'm going to be describing it uses the simple chemical procedure known as electrolysis.
Okay.
And basically what this is you have some kind of fluid. We're going to use salt water in our experiments. Okay. And some kind of container to hold it in. We're going to use a jar that we'll show you in just a second. And you want to have basically immersed electrodes. And for the record, I should say this actually before anything else. Okay. There are definitely poisonous chemicals and high voltages that you can hurt yourself with. Okay. If you try and do this at home. Okay. All you got to do is wear rubber gloves and not knock stuff over. Mm-hmm. But just don't be stupid. Okay. Okay. That's very important. If you're going to plug something into the wall that has a jar of salt water attached to it, right, don't be stupid. Okay. Very good point. Okay. Right. You can do this at home if you're safe. and you're an adult, and if you don't feel comfortable doing that sort of thing,
Right.
get a friend who has
Okay.
studied chemistry or electrical engineering or something to do it for you.
Sounds good.
Okay, but
Appreciate that
it's
advice.
pretty similar and simple to a lot of other things that people have probably done.
Oh, I'm sure.
But just please be safe. So we're going to use funky colors for this, and I'm going to scoot my chair just a little bit. But if this is your jar and this is your water line, basically we're going to want to have electrodes, which I'll use green for, immersed, and this is just a cutaway, immersed down into the water like this. Say they're wire electrodes, all right? And then you'll have, I'll go back to black again, these attached to electrical sources that go off, okay? One of them is a negative, one of them is a positive. And what's going to happen is it will ionize the metal contained in these electrodes, depending on what the metal is, and it will infuse the water with excited molecules of that metal. And so, that being drawn, we're going to just show here, basically what you want to use is one of these standard home masonry jars. Look at that. Wow, that's a neat effect.
I like that.
I like that we can see this live because that is a cool effect. There, put your hand behind it. There you go. Ooh, okay, so your standard mason jar, not to be confused with the Freemason jar, of course, and some distilled water, of course. You want to make sure it is distilled water.
Okay.
Because if you have impurities in the water, if you try and use tap water,
Right.
or some other drinking water that's not distilled, it will contaminate and ruin the experiment.
Okay. That's a
So
good point to
clean
make.
jar,
Okay.
distilled water,
Okay.
good clean distilled. I mean, $1 for a jug at the grocery
Oh yeah.
store,
Right.
Always distill at every point of the experiment, distilled water. What we're going to use is regular wax paper that you can get anywhere, again, at the store.
Don't mention any specific prices, but yeah, very inexpensive.
No prices, really inexpensive. $29.95. No, there's cheap wax paper, nothing special. Take this, fill your jar up with the distilled water. You'll actually want to put a little pinch of salt in there. And for the, again...
Any kind of special salt? Does that
It's non-iodized.
Non-iodized.
Right.
So distilled water, non-iodized
clean
salt.
table salt. That's right. That's sodium chloride. Just clean sodium chloride.
Okay.
Rubber band the jar. This is like kiddie stuff so far. Okay.
Right.
And that's the whole point.
You get the snake out and you get the venom.
Exactly. do 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 do. Well, just make sure, of course, that the salt
solution
is stirred into there. Right.
Okay.
You'll want to use a. I'm trying to fish this out of my pocket here.
Hey, easy now.
Yeah, really. If we can get a shot of this, a regular little. This is an alligator clip. Okay, that you'll buy
Like
at
something like
Radio
electronics
Shack or anywhere.
Device, right.
It's not gonna, again, cost you more than a few cents, more than likely.
Very inexpensive.
Make sure this is clean. Okay, we want a clean alligator clip. If you rust one up from an experiment or it gets all gnarly, toss it, man.
Okay.
Get rid of it, okay?
All right,
and
gotcha.
they will get eaten up because you're going to be passing some voltage through it.
Oh, okay.
All right?
All right.
You want 2 of these, and as we showed here, you're going to be using them to connect to the electrodes. Let me draw again. Let's try green here. Here's my wax paper coming across the top. And what we're going to need to use is a glue gun, which again, any of you should be able to get it home. What you're going to want to do is secure the top with the glue gun and connect the alligator clip so that it pokes the electrode through the wax paper and down into the liquid. But it does not allow any airflow between the outside and the inside.
So you got to keep a really tight seal.
That's the point of the glue gun is you can slop some glue on there, and it'll keep the alligator clip completely outside of the wax paper, and that's the point. So Now, as far as your electrical source, what you basically want to use is a 12-volt DC transformer that you can, again, buy at any electronics supply store. These are pretty cheap. These are the things if you play video games or you have a cell phone, the charger, it's like a power chunk that plugs into the wall.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
That's a transformer. And you want to use, that's 12 volts, okay, DC, direct current,
Right.
transformer. Now, here's where some of the art comes into it.
Okay.
Higher amperage versus lower amperage on that transformer. Because you can buy transformers that have little switches on them that select different settings, or you could buy a huge tabletop transformer that's 25 amps. It all depends on what you're trying to go for.
Okay.
You can actually do the experiment quicker versus slower with the amperage in order to put the metallic elements into a different spin state.
Okay.
And if anyone is familiar with the alchemical stages, there's many different allegories that have been used to explain alchemy, and one of them, or many of them rather, include color codings.
Yes,
And,
definitely.
yes, and those color codings directly correspond to stages of the experimentation that I'm describing right now. Again, if you put it on a lower voltage, lower amperage, longer phase experiment, you may end up with something turning pink or red, which, again, to those familiar with alchemical symbolism, that would be the red lion. This is the actual correlation to the ancient alchemical symbolism. Whereas if you can also end up with green or a white powder, and again, if it's in a powder or a stone form, it really just depends on the fine tuning of the experiment. What I'm giving is a rough outline again,
Right,
and
sure.
I really hope that a lot of the people that may choose to safely do this experiment under adult supervision
Absolutely.
will tweak those settings to try and find out what can be done, because there's obviously a lot that can be done that I can't do all myself,
Sure,
of course,
sure.
and there's any different number of combinations of
Right, a lot of
things.
variables can come into
A lot
play.
of variables. And so one of the major variables is the transformer that you use, whether you use a higher voltage or lower voltage or higher amperage or lower amperage. Please do not electrocute yourself. You're gonna
Not advisable.
You've got salt water and electrodes, and if you tilt that or drink it or stick your finger in it, you're gonna get shocked. And if you
Okay.
pass out and swallow your tongue, bad deal.
All right,
Okay,
right,
so
gotcha.
please be safe, people.
Right.
Now, as far as the electrodes, this is what I would like to mention.
Okay.
You can use any of those transitional elements in order to achieve an ORM state. And there is more to the experiment, which I'll get to in a second. But the electrode, again, the whole variables thing, which metal are you going to use? Okay, are you going to use silver? You're going to use osmium, iridium. Gold. There's a reason why gold is so highly priced. There's a reason why gold is so highly sought after and why it is so scarce. And there's a reason why most everything that had to do with alchemy had to do with gold. And that reason is that gold has a most special property among even those transitional metals that allows it to form a room temperature superconductor. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what a superconductor is, basically those are those things that can float above a magnet.
Right, absolutely.
And they exhibit anti-gravity, and if you pass a charge through it, it won't resist any of the charge. It will superconduct. Like if you hook up a battery to a wire, it'll make the wire warm because the wire is resisting, and it's heating up. Okay, it's transferring electrical energy into heat energy.
Right.
If you did that with a superconductor, if you made a wire that went, for your telephone poles, made out of a superconductor, you have 100% efficiency. You never lose
That's the key
any.
point. Exactly. There's
Right.
no resistance,
No
and
resistance.
so you can have a very, very efficient system, a very efficient flow of energy, and this ties into terms like zero-point energy, free energy, all these things that some may be familiar with through those kind of experimentations,
This
and
is
anti-gravity
exactly that.
technology, all that. It borders on that, and it's very much part and parcel of the same
It's part
thing.
and parcel. I'll actually touch on the anti-gravity bit in just a second when I get a little further in the experiment.
Sure.
But here's the thing about the gold. And hopefully this will drive up some gold sales here in town.
Well, that wouldn't really be our intention, but
You want to, get gold into the people's hands is, the whole idea. And
if it has some properties, yes, sure. But anyway, go ahead.
It has to be pure gold, and this goes back to the distilled water thing.
Right.
Contaminants in the water will permanently ruin the experiment. You'll have to restart over again.
Okay.
And the same thing goes with gold. Any tiny bit of contamination in that gold will ruin the experiment, and you'll waste your money and you'll waste your time and you won't get anywhere.
Okay.
What you want to do, and this is not necessarily something that you can just go to the grocery store. This is really the only thing you can't go to your corner electronics or grocery store and get is the gold itself, because it needs to be edible quality gold. This means that if you ground it up and put it in your coffee or your Goldschlager, okay, then you could ingest it and it would not harm you.
Okay.
Technically speaking, you want it to be what they call in the business 5 nines pure, which is 99.99999% pure.
Okay.
Maybe give or take a 9 or 2. Okay, it depends on the gold shop that you go to and what they have available and what they can do for you.
Okay.
But you really want it to be absolutely as pure as possible.
Okay.
Have them form the gold into a wire for you and use it as the electrode.
This is very similar to a similar device that my homeboy Jeff Coutures tries to talk about a lot, which is a little colloidal silver generator.
That's right.
But instead of using gold, he's going to use silver in order to cause a similar reaction.
Yes, silver exhibits a lot of the same properties, but superconductive and the extremity that gold takes to present itself in this new form is unique among those elements. Silver is second in line, and I use silver in a lot of my experiments. Don't get me wrong. I actually definitely use silver and these other elements, but gold is the primary element that you would want to use. So edible quality 5 nines pure gold.
Gotcha. Right.
And you can go, if you know somebody that has a gold shop, or you can find a gold shop that you trust, then you can have them make this for you.
Gotcha.
And it's not too expensive, because you only need a little bit. You only need a little bit in a little wire, 2 little wires. You can just snip it in half though once they give it to you.
Gotcha.
And use it for the electrodes.
Gotcha.
And so that's the how to set up the experiment, okay?
Okay.
Plug the transformer into the wall, being careful not to kill yourself,
Sure.
okay? And what you should see is the 2 little electrodes will start bubbling. That's the electrolysis procedure.
Okay.
And from that point, there's you're going to start maybe noticing strange things happening. And the water's going to start changing color, because it's it's transforming some of the sodium chloride into chlorine gas. You may smell a little bit of a chlorine gas smell. That's just fine. It just smells a little bit like bleach. When you take the wax paper off, you might smell that, but that's not dangerous at all. Just don't huff it, you don't want to huff bleach.
Right.
But the water may start swirling around. This is because of some of the special properties that the new form of gold is taking.
Okay.
And now, this is where I have to admit that it sounds a little strange, but you really need to think about your experiment while it's plugged into the wall.
Energy follows thought.
Energy follows thought. And the experiment will fail if you don't. And I have tried it many, many times myself personally in my own home, and I can tell you this is in fact the truth. This has been one of the major sticking points of the Ormustry, is that when you reach the level of quantum mechanics where you are dealing with subatomic particles, the random chance factor becomes quite large. If I hit this microphone off the table, there's a very good probability it's going to fall and hit the floor. If I was smaller than an atom, and this microphone was thus somewhat smaller than I was, and by virtue also smaller than an atom, and I did the same thing, there's a good possibility it may not fall and hit the floor, because the random inclusion of outside forces at that point are so high that the microphone may just stand there in midair, or it may disappear, or it may turn into a banana. It's difficult to tell when you're at such a tiny sub-microscopic scale. It's very difficult to tell exactly procedurally what's going to happen. And so when you're attempting to turn matter, the gold matter itself, into a Mattergy form, where it's now going to be half matter and half energy, there is a very high random variable in that procedure when it's plugged into the wall, is the time that I'm talking about, when you're actually running current through the gold. This is called the transmutation process. As soon as you plug that in and it starts bubbling, and you don't kill yourself, I'm going to keep saying that because I'm not going to get sued.
No.
I don't want the show getting sued. I don't want Corey getting sued. You do this at your own risk.
Right.
Big warning label.
Okay.
But once it starts bubbling, that is officially the transmutation process of alchemy. And like I said, depending on how long it's plugged in, the amperage, the voltage, blah, 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 those are variables. The kind of metal you use, those are variables.
Sure.
Okay, I'm talking about gold right now. And so once the gold starts taking on this new form of sort of a matter energy form, a Mattergy form, it will start to respond to energy fields that include a human's energy field,
Right, or a thought,
or a faraway action, a non-local action.
Right,
Because if I just swing my arm in the midair in the hallway, it's not going to hurt you. But if I swing it into your face, it will. Okay. But me in the hall, that's the non-local version.
Right.
And so normally a non-local event isn't going to too terribly disturb a local situation.
Right.
But when you're dealing with these very unique quantum properties, it very well may. Something that happens across the world very well may affect your little experimentation.
Right.
And so you want to keep these things in mind, and you want to have a clear thought pattern, and you want to have good, loving intentions.
That's always a good thing.
And you want to, breathe and think and involve your mind in the experiment.
So you're making it more of a contemplative, meditative process and more of a ritualistic process in addition to it just being...
It can be, and to tell you the God's honest truth, it probably will help the experiment if you involve yourself in such a manner.
It's just amazing to me to see how science comes full circle to embrace some of these, old truths that were sometimes considered superstitious.
This is the full circle, yes, it is.
And that's what's exciting about this day and age right now.
I'm quite excited myself.
Cool.
I just about pooped my pants when I first got this stuff to work. I mean,
Right.
I'm not going to lie to anybody. It was quite amazing.
And I'm really looking forward to the future about bringing more stuff out and getting into more detail about this and showing, again, more examples of how this can be applied to practical, real-world situations that we can make use of here in this area.
We definitely will.
Yeah, we're right on the verge of just, again, trying to introduce folks in the area to start, and then we can go from there as far as really getting this stuff put into implementation.
So let me finish with this experiment real
By all
quick.
means, please.
Once you have had this thing plugged in for an hour or 3 or however long you want to have it plugged in for, you want to be involved in it, you want to have, like I said, lower amperage, longer time period. Okay. That is up to the discernment of the user. Okay. If your stuff starts corroding, okay, and the water gets cloudy or too much chlorine smell, unplug it. I mean, you need to know when to stop the experiment. Okay, I can't tell you 20 minutes, stop the experiment.
Right. And that comes with experimentation.
That's
and
right.
Working in the field.
You will fail probably a couple times doing this experiment because I definitely did.
Right. Okay.
And but then it'll work and you'll be really amazed. So remove the electrode. Unplug it first, please, before you touch anything. Right. Okay. Remove the electrodes. Remove the wax paper, and then at this point you are going to actually need gloves on, and because you're going to be doing some work with a little bit of lye. Lye is a chemical that it's actually in soap. It's what provides the slick feeling to soap. And basically, lye is a very powerful alkaline that will eat away your skin quite readily if you get it wet and get it on your skin. If you have latex gloves on, you're fine.
Okay.
So please wear latex gloves.
Okay, 'cause
Don't
it's highly
splash
corrosive
it in your
otherwise.
face.
Okay.
Don't get it in your eyes.
Okay.
Don't drink it.
Okay.
You're going to die if you do that, so don't do it.
Okay.
Now, you can probably get this stuff maybe at a grocery store. It depends on the store. Look around. But it's sodium hydroxide, lye, L-Y-E, just regular lye. And if it comes in pellet form, what you'll probably want to do is get yourself a mortar and a pestle.
Okay, so we go to the other camera angle. All right,
and crush up the stuff, and then dump it into your finished solution. And again, you'll probably want to use a spoon. She's not wearing gloves because this is obviously just a mock trial, but you got to wear gloves if you're going to do this.
This is just a dry run, folks.
This is a dry run, okay? But you want to make sure that's ground up real fine in your mortar and pestle.
Right.
When you do that. So take that stuff, and we're going to get one more cut here of the Pyrex. What you want to do is take a Pyrex plate, and just like this one that we have right here, please make sure that it is Pyrex, something that can be put into very high temperatures and not shatter, because you don't want, again, shattered glass, cut people. Not good.
We're trying to avoid all injuries, all deaths,
no
all
electrocution,
dismemberment.
no poison, no burning eyes, no glass cutting.
Sounds good.
Don't want that
that
stuff. Okay. So use Pyrex and pour your solution from the masonry jar carefully, because it's got lye into it, into the Pyrex. Now, what you might want to do before your Pyrex is you can optionally clean your solution. And this you can do once, twice, 3 times. Again, this is a variable in your experimentation.
Okay.
And the only thing involved in cleaning the solution is siphoning the water down to, because you'll see a fine powder collecting on the bottom of the jar.
Okay.
Siphon the water down. Again, don't suck any lye into your mouth, please.
Okay, no problem. All right.
And then just refill it with more clean distilled water.
Okay.
If you want to do that twice, if you want to do it 5 times, I would recommend doing it at least once, okay, because you will have a much cleaner product. And you don't want a bunch of lye and salt in your stuff, okay? So probably clean it, pour it in your Pyrex dish, and then put that in your oven on low, warm or something.
So maybe around 250, 300 degrees?
250, 300, yeah, I would say within 200s. And, and slowly dry the powder, okay, out of the water. Okay. And now what you'll get at that point is a sort of a, it looks like you've just dried up a bunch of white salt or powder or something in the sun, and you're actually going to have to use, again, just normal everyday razor blade, like this one right here, if I can get it out of this thing. I do want to show you. Regular razor blade. Oh, here. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Regular razor blade. Okay, here, take that, babe. And with your Pyrex dish, scraping the razor blade away from you carefully, please.
Okay.
To get collect the powder off the bottom.
Okay. Okay.
And now at this point, you're either going to be able to tell if you have a contaminated product or not. Take your spoon again. The powder that was on the Pyrex plate, place it in a spoon. And now this is where, again, a little bit of discernment comes up. Do you want to use a blowtorch or a candle or an element on your stove? You need to heat the spoon up.
Okay.
And what you're testing for is, this is the test for the purity of the ormus.
Okay.
And if it burns or it sizzles to the spoon or in any way melts or anything like that, it's contaminated and you might as well just throw the batch out. That's fine. Again, you ruin it, do it again. It's a pretty cheap experiment once you have the gold. Okay.
Okay.
But if it's clean, if it's a clean experiment and you had good intentions and you did the steps correctly, you cleaned it out, you siphoned the water off a couple times, you used a fair amount of gold and all that, and you did it correctly, then you're in for a neat surprise, because once you put a flame, like I like to use a blowtorch because it'll heat something up real quick, cleanly, right?
Okay.
It's a little blowtorch, I just happen to have one, under the spoon. And if it's clean, then at that point the powder should actually levitate off the spoon. And this is can be achieved also if you wanted to use electrodes and like
give it
a charge that way, or place it like maybe in direct sunlight with like a magnifying glass or something, to use the light energy to charge the powder, or something like that. But basically you're charging a superconductive powder, and when that happens it's going to exhibit certain special properties like levitation, anti-gravity. And this is actual anti-gravity. I mean, please try this at home. Don't, again, kill yourself. But I'd love to have 100 people in Austin doing anti-gravity experiments. And you can do this. I have done it. I mean, boy, howdy, you can do this, okay? And so...
I think we could take steps to bring this out more so, you know, in the public, and we'll get a lot of little alchemists in the little areas, little pockets and corners of Austin in the near future.
So future alchemists will definitely be talking more about this. At that point, you've got some crazy quantum powder, and just to quickly mention, you can charge it, which is what I was talking about, using the electrical or the heat or the light. That's a charging, like a battery. But you can also imprint the powder like a videotape. You can record your thoughts and feelings and the energy of a room, or basically any electromagnetic field.
So you can tune it, in other words. You can tune
it's
it,
like a tuning,
and it'll retain whatever.
It'll retain an imprinting of that.
Gotcha.
But just remember, the charging and the imprinting are two different things, okay? If you want it to give out a strong signal, it needs to be charged. And if you want it to give out a strong signal that means something, it needs to be imprinted.
Okay, gotcha.
And
so it has intent.
It has intent. And so these are some kind of wacky things that not a lot of people would probably, in the normal scientific realm, be very forward about. But this may sound surprising, but most universities, major universities, are aware of this. They have been for a while.
I know of
this. I know the people that have been involved in this. Please go to that website that I showed before. Again, we'll link that all off, though, off of the Esoteric Science Roundtable website. So please keep an eye on the ESR website.
Please do.
It's really, really important stuff that we'll be able to bring to you. All the artificial intelligence for free alchemy plans, and all that sort of thing.
So we're right on the brink of a lot of exciting things as far as experimentations and things that we can actually, like I say, practically implement and use here in this area for the benefit of the people here. So this is just step one in getting people introduced to these ideas, and then we're going to go from there and try to get some folks that are capable and curious that want to experiment further. And it's all about experimenting. You know, that's what life is. Life is a big experiment. And so, you know, I'm glad to be able to bring these ideas to the public in this area for the first time, really, and then generate a little interest if we're able to. So I want to finish up here in the last few minutes of the show by discussing briefly an upcoming event that's going to be happening tomorrow, which is traditionally or popularly called the Harmonic Concordance. It's going to take place, the specific time of it, if you want to nail it down, would be tomorrow at 7:13 p.m. here Central Standard Time in Texas. And there will be an eclipse of the full moon, or there will be an eclipse of the moon, rather, at that time. And that's going to, at that exact 7:13 time, and that's going to allow for part of another astrological alignment where you're going to have 6 specific planets and/or planetoids involved. And in particular, you're going to have Jupiter, Saturn, the Moon, Mars, the Sun, and Chiron, which is a planetoid. And that they're going to have a unique alignment that's going to be something that's really hasn't happened before in the history of mankind. And now that we're aware of it and we're understanding of the implications of energy, exchange of energy, there are people on this planet that are preparing to intelligently work with this exchange of energy. And so we're trying to anchor this energy in and create a pool of light, if you will, so that we can implement that energy for the benefit of humanity. And just like with the so-called harmonic convergence of 87, this is that times some. This is an exponential equivalent of that. And so I would like to ask everybody at home that would be interested in doing a little brief contemplative exercise with us here. I would like to start by just getting everybody focused on this concept of this alignment and the opportunity for humanity to come together in a real way to help one another through their intent of goodwill and right human relations. And we can accomplish a tremendous amount with that right and proper intent to help others. And so if I could indulge folks out there, I'm going to say this prayer, which is called the Great Invocation. If everybody would just link up, if you will, and contemplate and consider these words and how this alignment and exchange of energy can help us out here in this area, and we can make use of it. So if everybody would please get in that contemplative state quickly, please, and just consider these words. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everybody, for indulging me and participating along at home. I feel like we had a little good exchange of energy just then, and hopefully we can build upon that. And so what I would like to ask folks as well is tomorrow, if people would consider at 7:13 at the time of the eclipse, to do some sort of a contemplative or meditative exercise, whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you're familiar with at that time, in order to help, again, seal this energy in for our better use. And so again, it's 7:13. I've got a little.
There you go.
I think it's great. Yeah, that's tomorrow, and that's what we have available for us
tomorrow.
So anybody that wants to join their energy, there are many, many individuals. There are literally millions, probably borderlining on 1 billion people worldwide in some form or fashion that are going to be participating. So you're in good company. It's just a matter of getting your intent together and just getting in a quiet place and contemplating this energy exchange and how we can play our part in it, because we can play a very real part in it here. It's more than we might realize. Just have that, be open to this. That's all I can ask. If you consider being open to this exchange, and you might be surprised. So I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap up a little bit here. We've got a couple of minutes left to just maybe recap a bit as far as some of the concepts of computer technology coming into play and melding with the metaphysical.
That's right.
And some of these concepts that are considered a little out there are finding their way into the mainstream through science and quantum science, quantum physics, quantum mechanics. All these things are allowing for some of these terms and concepts that, you know, were more within the spiritual realm or metaphysical and weren't really taken too seriously. But things are changing. We're seeing that more and more these days, and more rapidly and more drastically, that you're seeing science having to reassess and reevaluate some of their traditional stances on certain issues.
Let me just add real quick.
Please, by all means.
There are worldwide very intelligent organizations that are working on these sorts of projects that we are involved with, and hopefully that we'll be able to bring more information to the public from in the near future. But don't take lightly the fact that this artificial intelligence metagrid technology is coming to the forefront at the same time as this Ormust technology, because Mattergy and the HyperNet, as it's being called, the next stage of the internet, really are some of the most important concepts in the upcoming time-changing stuff that's going on, in my personal opinion.
I can agree more wholeheartedly. I'm glad to see science merging and coming to those understandings.
Let me throw this website up there again real quick.
Sure.
For anybody that missed it. It's a subsection of a website. Here we go. http://www. Just like every other website. Ormus, O-R-M-U-S, .ws for website. That's the main website. And then if you type slash to go to a subsection, and a tilde, which is that little squiggle there, pyramid. So ormus.ws/tilde pyramid. That's a subsection of the website. Like I said, it's not the newest, but the information is definitely appropriate for what
Okay.
we've been
Well,
talking
hey, we
about.
need to wrap up real quick, but thanks so much, Will, for coming on. I really appreciate that. And we'll have you on in the future. Megan, thanks for your help. Really appreciate it. Awesome. We're going to wrap up. So thanks a lot for taking the time to view. Have a nice evening, everybody. We'll see you around.